I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the video just so everybody can see me. If the connection starts to get bad, we'll turn it right back off. Hi. So guys, I do like for, these Zoom presentations to be a little bit interactive. I am a little bit new to MS Teams, but I know we have a chat room. So sometimes I might ask you, just join via chat. Let me see the conversation. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you, Johansson. So I like to see people responding in the chat, and I might ask for your help on a couple of occasions. So I do invite you to help me out. So my presentation is called Shapes and Shadows, because I was thinking about how, I don't know if when you were kids, you looked at empty rooms or maybe, shadows and night landscapes and imagined all kinds of monsters and creatures and weird things. But once you shed a light on them, it's really, they become more real, more mundane. It's not really as creepy or scary, because what is unknown and what is in the dark can be more uncomfortable just because we don't know what it is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I'm sorry if this is a little cheesy, but I'm recently teaching high school, and high school teachers do things a little bit differently, and these memes are a recurrent thing in Zoom meetings, but I like to read the room since I can't see your faces. So can you please, just to get a feeling for how you're doing today, which duck are you on this day?
I am a hard 6. Like I'm going down, but I'm still up. I'm still upright.
I'll agree with you. That's me by force of coffee. Pretty soon to be a 9 a few hours.
Christina, are you okay?
Okay. All right. And the 8s. I'm a little bit worried about the 8s.
Yeah.
All right. So then you guys are probably my audience. So between a 2 and an 8. Dr. Kihana, that's 2 and 8. Okay, I see it. All right. So a little bit about me. Thank you, Dr. Lara, for the introduction. Right now I am teaching Spanish in Hartford, Connecticut. It's been a journey. It's been interesting. But formerly I used to teach English at University of Puerto Rico and then University of North Florida. So here are some photos of myself with my students. I'm always super happy and inspired when teaching young people how to write and encouraging young writers, whether, it's academic or creative writing. But I really love to encourage and inspire people to just let it all out through writing. So I do have 2 books of poetry. I don't know if I have anyone here from last year, but I did talk a little bit about them and the process of publishing them. So I'm just, recycling slides from last year's presentations in case you don't know me. They're both, the topics in these books can be, according to other people, a little bit dark. I do like to go into, more difficult feelings, and I like to, yeah. So I like to, pepper my writing with art and photography. So these are some of the photos in Stars Like Fish, and this is some of the art in Where Everything Lost Is Found, which are poems that I wrote when I was a teenager. So, thank you, Johansson, for sharing the link. So that's all about me. Now, wait, next slide, sorry. So, all right, let's talk about 2020 or not. So we all know, that a lot of things happened last year. A lot of people are still traumatized about things that happened in 2020. And not everyone has really had the chance to process everything. And I think a lot of people aren't even aware of what has affected them and in what ways. So I see that a lot of people are still in survival mode because life goes on no matter what happens. So I'd like to know, it's not necessarily, you might not necessarily be feeling a certain way because of the pandemic financial crisis, events of social injustice and all this. So what I'm going to talk about today isn't necessarily relating back to this apocalyptic year, but feelings that are uncomfortable in general. But I'd like to know another question for you. Some people did well during 2020. They were at home, but a lot of people obviously did not. I know people who have lost loved ones to the pandemic, people who have lost their jobs, or a lot of young people have now this feeling of hopelessness, like what is this all for, because of what they've seen in recent years. So can anyone relate to that, or was 2020 a pretty okay year for you? No, I'm not rhetorically asking. I really do want to know. If it was okay for you, I'm happy to hear it. Oh no, business cut in half. Yep. Okay, Pablo had a great year. Yeah, that's good. I mean, because we weren't socializing, I was on social media a lot, and most of the people that I saw who were suffering were those who couldn't be out and about, all the extroverts who wanted to be with their friends. But if you had the opportunity to work or study from home, I guess it wasn't a bad year. So I'm very happy to hear it wasn't, the worst. Online classes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, personal life was rough, but school and everything was good. Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that some of you liked the online classes. I think it's kind of nice to be in your PJs and at home, but I still prefer the classroom experience. So, okay, so this may not necessarily speak to you, but I did want to comment on it because it's kind of been on my mind. So some of my points are, how do we process trauma when we don't even know how to do that? And more importantly, some people can afford or have the means to see a therapist, which I obviously recommend if you can do that, or if that's something that feels right to you. But a lot of us are just doing it on our own, figuring things out and trying to help others around us. And another issue for many of us is sometimes we don't know what we're feeling because we're trying to put our best face forward, trying to, just go about our day and continue our lives and be supportive of others, and we don't even know what's going on. It might be those, I don't want to call them negative feelings, but those repressed feelings just fall deeper into the background, and we're not really, dealing with it, and that can manifest in different ways. So something I noticed now that I'm teaching very young people, mostly kids 12 to 18, who just came back from school after, being at home, kind of left to their own devices, studying online. There have been, I didn't know them before, but there have been, just some disturbing or, concerning trends to me. And they're the ones I outlined there. A sense of detachment I've noticed in these kids. Some of them have lost family members, grandparents, great-grandparents to COVID. And I think maybe the way we process as adults is not the same, how teenagers, wait, let me start over. The way we process as adults cannot compare to how a teenager might process the news of people dying everywhere. They might feel that you can't touch them, but they could die at any moment. So I see that, not on the surface. They can't talk about it, but there is a kind of, detachment, like, oh, nothing matters. Extreme independence in teaching. I noticed they maybe got used to doing everything online without the help of an adult, and they don't want any type of help. There's a lot of anxious behavior, I've seen kids who are on their phones all the time. They don't know how to be in a space with other people. Avoidance, denial, quick frustration, giving up easily. So I don't know, maybe this doesn't reflect on adults the way it does in teenagers, but it's something I noticed and something that I thought, hey, maybe I went through some of these things. I just dealt with them in a different way, but definitely the denial. Sometimes we just try to avoid. So here's a poem by one of my students. I am teaching Spanish, but I'm also involved in newspapers, so I'm doing what I always do, pushing kids to write poems. And this one, it's, I don't know if this reflects the feelings of anyone here, but would someone like to read this poem? It is by an 11th grader, so let's keep that in mind. But I'm tired of hearing my own voice. Would someone like to read the poem? If not, that's okay. I don't want to. Yeah, who said me?
Quijano is down.
Okay, Quijano, go for it.
Are like drugs to you, no matter how many nights spent crying at home around your desk? You've got this. No matter how many times you've been told, you start to wonder if your own mental happiness is allowed. Because every day, 7:30 a.m., you're still there, still learning, still trying, still pretending like everything's okay, because you're convinced that this is what it'll take. This will all pay off, or your parents will be so proud, pushing you until you break.
Thank you, Johansson. So this was turned in by a student without any prompting. She wrote this on her own, and I think, if we take it apart, there is a lot to unpack there. She isn't necessarily addressing feelings directly, but because school academics are like drugs to you. So usually if we say something is like drugs, most of the time it's a positive thing. But this is not a very positive poem, is it? And this will all pay off, or your parents will be so proud, pushing you until you break. It's almost like the student isn't enjoying being young and going to school. The slides and teams. Oh, okay. I don't know what to do about that. There's a grid view. Let me see. Okay, so it just says Capital Prep Magnet School. Because Johansson, this text took up more of the slide. I think the rest should be fine. They're a little more centered. But yeah, it starts with school academics. School academics are like drugs to you. So anyway, we can analyze it and take it apart, but I don't really want to spend that much time on it. It's just that I thought, okay, this is, I think, a representation of how many kids are feeling about school right now. And it's a little bit depressing, I feel. So let's move on to next point. Okay. So, when I say poetry as free therapy, I do mean that in a lighthearted way, but it's obviously not a substitute for therapy. Again, if you can do that and it helps you, please do. But if you cannot, don't have the courage, don't have the means, and you're trying to help yourself, just find a way. And if you have the ability to pick up a pen, pick up a notepad or a device, and you can write some lines, or you can look up texts to read. Poetry can be very therapeutic. Sometimes we don't know, like I said before, we don't understand what is going on inside of us until we see that feeling mirrored in art, music, or in this case, poetry, because it's relatable. And Dr. Loreto said something to me yesterday that is, I don't think she knew how to quote it exactly, and I'm misquoting it even further about how there's a U-shaped story missing from someone else's page of life. So there's always a contribution that we can make. Maybe we can express something that is a great help to someone else just because it expresses what has been ineffable up to a certain point. And another reason that poetry can be therapeutic to read is that because unlike prose, like a story or a novel, poems are strong emotions condensed into imagery. So you don't, I mean, of course you can read stories to help figure things out, but a poem, it's like pure concentrated emotion. So I wanted to read some poems with you all as examples. And these poems, I tried to pick poems that were particular. I didn't pick a whole bunch because I don't know if we have the time, but as we read them, focus on the images, right? They're very visual. Obviously there's metaphor, and metaphor mirrors something from reality that is similar in certain ways, and I think that can be a challenge for people who aren't, like innate writers or aren't drawn to writing. But we don't have to worry about that because part of this presentation is going to focus on a little exercise that I would like everybody to try. So we're just going to read these examples and think about what they say to you, because they're descriptive, but they're suggestive. So this is, okay, let me give a little bit of background. I went through some really hard times, 2020 and before 2020. I don't want to get too personal because I don't like being vulnerable. That's one of the most uncomfortable feelings, and talking about feelings for me can be very, very uncomfortable. So, just a brief background, I hit a very low point. I was in denial about how sad I was. And it wasn't until, I was pushed to a limit where I couldn't handle that emotional pain anymore that I started, first thing I did was hide among poetry books. I just started reading a lot of poetry again, and Stephen Crane's Black Writers and Other Poems is one of my absolute favorites. And this was one of those poems that really spoke to me. Can someone please volunteer to read it?
I'll throw myself out there. So, there was set before me a mighty hill, and long days I climbed through regions of snow. When I had before me the summit view, it seemed that my labor had been to see gardens lying at impossible distances.
Thank you. So, what does, I mean, it's very ambiguous and suggestive. It's not, it could be what it's about. This one kind of, explicitly about, this poem reminded me of, I always go back to Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, how Alice always tries to go someplace where she is not. In Wonderland, she sees this beautiful garden through the tiny door, and after going through, all kinds of trouble to get there, she realizes, what, this is not what I was expecting. This is a nightmare. So this is, similar, but not quite the same. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm not trying to push anyone.
Oh, we're here to be pushed. You're the poem pusher.
I'm the poem pusher trademark, yes.
But I think for me, this kind of reminds me of how you have a plan in your head for like how your life and how your trajectory is going to be. And then you get to what you think is the pinnacle, what the summit is. And you're like, okay, I'm here. But then you realize that there's so much more to do, and that can be a positive thing, that can be a negative thing. It can be very depressing as well. Yeah, so I feel like both of those things are in here.
Yes, and now Karen is saying the journey never ends, no matter the work, and I like that because it's a very neutral stance. So, like you said, Jeanette, it doesn't have to be depressing, but if that's what you were looking forward to, and all of a sudden you see, oh wait, this is not the end of my journey. Now I have to go downhill, and it says impossible distances. So I guess there's the hopelessness of it all. And I had a note here that says, I just wanted to clarify the feelings. I don't like to say that feelings are good or feelings are bad. Good is what we like, bad is what we don't like. So we will react to certain events according to our experiences, our personalities, and what mechanisms we've built to deal with our situations. So the thing is, when certain feelings, especially the ones that make us uncomfortable, go unaddressed or just pushed back, the more you avoid them. This is actually not something I'm saying out of personal experience, which I did experience it. But if you look up, if you Google it on Psychology Today and popular psychology magazines, you're gonna look, because I actually did Google it for a moment. Like, let me make sure that what I'm saying isn't out of the blue. The more you try to suppress a feeling, the worse it's going to be for you, and it can manifest in physical ways, like weakened immune systems, muscle aches, all kinds of bodily problems, because that pain doesn't have a place to go. So catharsis is necessary. If you have to cry it out, you have to just scream and cry, that's perfectly fine. If you can write a poem about it also, but it's very important to recognize feelings, because if we try not to feel, then we've lost our power. That feeling is indirectly, unconsciously dominating us. So I'm gonna pass the slide to our next poem, which is a haiku. Would someone like to read this one? Someone else?
I'll go ahead and read it for y'all. It says, after killing a spider, how lonely I feel in the cold of the night.
Yeah. Thoughts?
It's kind of sad because it would imply that the only company that the writer has is a spider.
And they killed it. So there's a point there too. If the only company was the spider and they killed the spider, that could go, whoa, my slideshow disappeared.
What you can do is share your screen instead, because I don't know why it glitched. But yeah, just go ahead and share your screen, and then you can minimize us.
Okay, dokie. Let me see how I do that.
But while you're doing
I'm
that,
going to.
I messed up.
I am.
My headphone jack fell
PowerPoint
out.
live window. Okay, so I can just share a singular window. Okay, perfect. So let me just go to the spider.
But I agree with Q about that. That might be the only person or the only living thing that this person has in their life. Or maybe it's an act of, like lashing out, to kill this spider and then feeling sad and regretful afterwards.
Absolutely. So I like how you said person, because we're not reading about a person here, but a spider, but this could be about a person.
Oh, okay.
Right? Maybe they had this one connection and they cut it and now they're lonely in the cold of night. So again, you can interpret this however you relate to it, but yeah, I thought of several things. Anybody else want to contribute their thoughts? I can't see the chat anymore, and I don't like it. I don't know how to.
Don't worry, I'll be in there.
Okay. So
Um,
please let me know if anyone says anything. So I found many haikus that I wanted to share, but at the same time, I didn't want to flood the PowerPoint with poems. But here's another one. I would like to hear someone else, if possible, please, another voice.
I can read for you.
Thank you.
All right. And it says, everything I touch with tenderness, allies, pricks like a bramble.
Okay. So I don't think I've ever seen a live bramble bush, but I think we've all been in contact with prickly plants. So here, you have the image of a bramble, but what else could this be about?
just feeling too sensitive, I think. Like
Mm.
connect, because like the touch can be a connection, but also like with every connection, there's the potential for pain.
Oh, I like that. I love talking with other people about poetry because there's always new perspectives. I didn't think of this so much as being sensitive. I thought, like other things hurt you, but what if you are the sensitive one, So that's a really good perspective. Yes. Okay. Any other comments? Oh, okay. Well, my finger slipped, and now we're on Wordsworth. So
I love how that's your excuse. It's like, oh, it slipped.
So too late. We're looking at daffodils now. So this one is not maybe that much of a downer. If anyone's familiar with this poems, it's all about the daffodils, and I've always just really loved this poem. It's kind of lighthearted and just a happy poem. Would somebody else volunteer, please?
I can do it.
Thank you.
Okay. I wander lonely as a cloud that floats on a high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
Okay. So I've always liked this one. If you're the type of person who likes to look at clouds and attribute, like feelings to them, like, oh, that's a powerful cloud, or not feelings necessarily, but personality traits, or oh, that's a lonely little cloud. So thought that was interesting. Lonely as a cloud that floats on high, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, and I don't think I've seen daffodils in the wild, only in botanical gardens and such, but they're such happy flowers. And fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Any thoughts about this one, and what if we transfer this to human experiences versus clouds and flowers? What could this be about?
Well, if we're talking about lonely wandering, could it perhaps be about homelessness and kind of wandering about without anywhere to settle down?
Sure, absolutely.
When it comes to
And
romantics, I have the weirdest interpretation. So
no, I love it. The weirder, the better, because the more common interpretations are the ones we're used to hearing. So please bring them on. So no, absolutely. If we think of that, that aspect of it, the lonely cloud being, homeless, aimless, hopeless, but the daffodils suddenly, brighten up the situation. If we think of that situation, the homelessness and whatnot, what could the daffodils be a symbol for?
I'm not sure at that point. I was thinking more like, and in nature, I find home. Kind of like being rejected from London, and then here's this lovely lake beneath the trees and so on, and this is where I rest.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that would be, I think, a more literal interpretation, but why not? I've found things in the wild that make me very happy. You might be on a walk, just on your way somewhere, and oh, look, a mushroom, or look, a bunch of daisies, or whatever, and it can make you suddenly happy. But something that I thought of, and this is just my random, association, because interpretation, it's really subjective, and there's no such thing. I think a lot of students resent poetry because they're used to maybe their teacher telling them, no, this poem is about this or about that. I think the magic of poetic language is that it can suggest many things to the reader. And this image today, when I was reading it, I thought maybe, I don't know, the way I saw it is maybe it's a person wandering the streets lonely, and all of a sudden they see a group of happy people. The way they're described, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, and looking at the daffodils so delicate and yellow, I thought of maybe, a group of young ladies dressed in yellow dresses, just giggling and being happy. Even if they're not people sometimes seeing a group of happy people just being free and, skipping about can make you feel a little less lonely or more lonely, depending, right? So yeah, it's very, I guess, simple in its imagery, but it can suggest a lot. Guys, I'm sorry if you're seeing my screen a little bit weird. I just exited presentation mode. So a little more on, why I say poetry can be free therapy. We can find solace, validation, or company when we're reading about other people's experiences, or we can find, when we write it, our own, or actually no, when we read it as well, our own feelings illustrated in beautiful ways. So someone else can speak for us at given times. And I like to, tell certain types of students that writing poetry is a lot like casting spells, because a witch or warlock or magician, in folklore, usually when casting a spell, there's almost a chant or a poem that they have to say out loud. So it's like an incantation. And when we are writing for ourselves, we are organizing our thinking. We are, putting down or kind of taming reality in a way. And when we name those emotions, name them what we will. We don't have to call them by their name. If it's depression, frustration, whatever, you don't have to call it what it is, but you can call it something, even if it's a metaphorical, a symbolic name. We're taming those emotions, and we are indirectly facing them. So, okay, once we transform their shape and aspect, they are easier to face. So they meaning these, I guess, frightening, uncomfortable emotions, and those frightening effects will have been dulled. It's much like turning on the light in a room full of spooky shadows. So I am going to show you some examples of how I did it. Not entirely comfortable with it, not going to lie, but it's only fair. So when you sit down, if you intend to, and I really hope you do, you can write with the intention of sharing, or you could do it privately in your journal or whatever, whatever means you use, if it's digital notes on your laptop. But what's most important is to not have a specific goal in mind. Don't be self-conscious about whether the writing is good. Just sit down and do it as a cathartic exercise, as a therapeutic exercise. And if you don't like it, you can always delete the file. You can burn the piece of paper. You can throw it away. You can rip it up. And it sounds violent, but burning is actually a mode of activation for sigils. And I don't know if anybody's here, if anybody here is actually even interested in that. But is anyone familiar with sigil making? Okay, I think I mean, I can't see the chat, but I hear
Kiana says no, and Karen is saying.
okay, it's a very silent silence, so I'm going to take it as a no.
And Karen said she's read about it, like, with runes.
Oh, right, runes or sigils. But you can make your own sigils by writing a phrase. It can be something you want to manifest, something you want to keep in mind, and you just keep on making shapes out of those letters and reforming them until you have a symbol that can look like a rune or something else. And once it's done, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but you can burn it as an activation. So I like to think of writing as spell work, especially poetry. So there's no commitment in it. A lot of people, I think, have that fear or self-consciousness of the blank page, or, oh, somebody's going to read it, somebody's going to judge it. Not always. You don't have to. You don't have to share it. It's nice when you do, but you don't have to. So this is this has never seen the light of day. This is something that I wrote when I was very sad. And this was a moment where I couldn't work out through what I was feeling. So I just want to explain a little bit of, where I was and what was going on. But I was living in Florida, and in Jacksonville, Florida, and there were a lot of bugs in Florida, a lot of cicadas, crickets, frogs. There was a lot of life in the earth, and I was sitting outside a lot, just contemplating, just staring out into, into the green. So a lot of my writing at this time, and that's also something that I kind of retook because I hadn't been writing for a long time, but I had all these emotions that I'd been repressing that just squeezed out of me through just writing about anything. And something I was writing a lot about was bugs, just images of insects and what the insects were doing. And I'm not comfortable sharing them because honestly, I don't think they're good poems, but it helped. It helped in some way. Did it cure me? Not really, but did it help? Probably. So I'm not going to ask anyone to read this one because it's one of my own. So to dream the sounds of every tiny night creature, dull arrhythmic screeches, an orchestra, the echoes of dead stars, the song of everything, the lights of night that fade into the viscous silence of waking, the song of nothing. So, I mean, I'm not going to ask you to interpret this one unless you want to. That would be nice. I love it when other readers transform. Maybe, I mean, I know what was on my mind when I wrote it, but if this says anything to you, I love to hear it as well.
Pablo and Alexis dig it.
Okay. All right. That's good. So, sometimes, I don't know if this happens to anyone else, when we have a lot on our minds and we're stressed, anxious, sad, our head can get very noisy. And I think all these sounds of cicadas and crickets were just amplified in my mind. And as I would wake up, it would just sound very silent to me. So, among other things that you can probably interpret. So this is another one. This is actually part 3 of a poem that I started very much. I was inspired by the Stephen Crane poems that I was showing you, where they're kind of a little bit like fables, like, oh, this is a story of something that happened, but what it's about is a lot deeper. So I don't want to read the first parts because I thought, I want to share these poems, but I started crying as I was reading them, and I thought, I don't want to cry today in front of a bunch of strangers. So we're not doing that. I'm just going to pick this one. But so it was like part 3 of this lady who dreamed of an ice castle that melted into a puddle of water. So that's why we're here in the lake. So there was a lady who lived in a lake She dressed herself in mud and garlands of reeds. How fortunate am I to have been granted my heart's wish, she told the toads. So I was living in Florida. So I think it was very much influenced by the landscape, which is very much like that picture that you're looking at. It wasn't ugly, but it wasn't, it's not my idea of the most beautiful place on earth. Very hot, muggy. But there's a point to all this, I promise. I think there's one more. Okay. So this one, I know the rhyme is a little bit forced, but that was the last thing on my mind. I wasn't trying to write good poetry. I was just trying to get things out of my system. I from my flesh pulled 7 daggers, with which I'd become one. How long I hemorrhaged, forward staggered, believing I could run. So I think my first refuge was poetry, and the second one was tarot cards. I was doing a lot of reading, just pulling random cards and trying to find answers anywhere I could. So that was also kind of influencing my imagery at the time. So what I hope to have modeled for you and inspired you to do is, if you are in a certain state where I know there's something going on with you, maybe you're not even sure, or even if there's nothing going on with you, there's nothing wrong with trying this exercise. But sometimes you have to really look around you. We're often distracted by, pop-ups on our phones. We're expecting emails from work or there's always a lot going on. But if you can disconnect and really try to see whether, let me see, I wrote something in my notes. Let's see. Oh, no, I can't find my note. Oh, yeah, here it is. So you can look at clouds. You can look at flowers. You can look at plants. If you have animals where you live, I don't know, reptiles, horses. I remember in Florida, there was a very particular type of fauna. There were lots of birds, lots of lizards, many squirrels, and just a lot of animal activity that I just spent my time looking at. And I was writing about the moths and the lizard eating the flies, and I don't know what, that was very therapeutic for me. So, hey, if you don't have nature, you don't have to look to nature. You can look at in your kitchen and look at your coffee cup, and do you see faces in your coffee or your tea? Do you see faces in the walls? If your surroundings don't inspire you, like if you're still not feeling it, go to a place in your mind, real or imaginary, or a moment in time. Go to a memory. It can be a happy memory. It can be a sad memory. Let's say we're revisiting a painful memory. Don't look at it in the eye. Don't look at it directly. Go slow around the, let's say like the borders of the image. So if there is a powerful memory that's too much to process, start with little things, with maybe the setting, something safer to kind of scaffold you, I guess, onto where you want to get to. And you don't have to rush to get to where you want to get to, which is, dealing with that emotion. So if you take yourself to an imaginary or a place of memory, write about what you see, hear, smell, touch, or taste, sensory images. Lonely as a cloud, the yellow daffodils, the spider. You don't have to think about, what you want your images to symbolize, because all of that will come later. Just like we're reading the poem first and then interpreting it. Sometimes that stuff is not deliberate. Sometimes you're writing and then you go back and read it and go like, oh, maybe the spider that I wrote about represents this or that. Also, does anything, and when I say anything in your image, right, in your house or in your mind, you can personify it. Like the lonely cloud. Sometimes I know this hashtag from Instagram that's I see faces. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Okay, another deep silence. So basically, it's people who see faces like in patterns of wood, or hooks with anywhere that you see faces. Sometimes there's faces and patterns, and obviously we're just personifying because inanimate objects don't have feelings, but we can transfer those feelings. You can manipulate that reality that you're creating. So it's 5:15. We're right on track. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you need a little more, take a breath, take a moment. I'm going to mute myself and give you this time, and try to write something. And you don't have to share it if you don't want to. So I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. Guys, everybody good? If you're inspired, please keep going. Okay, so Karen, thank you for sharing that. Let's read it. Whoa, okay, this is good stuff. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is good stuff. Let me. No, Jeanette. Yeah, I can tell, Karen. Pablo.
I love how all of us need to sleep.
Yes. Johansson, this poem looks like it would make like a good what do you call it, like those slam poetry sessions. I can feel that rhythm. Okay,
Yeah,
there's a stress, so I like it. Oh no. Oh.
Q, I'm seeing a whole different side of you.
Right?
Who, me?
Turns on the PS.
I didn't know you were a lyrical genius, sir.
I
Right?
wouldn't go that far.
I would.
I'm joking, Doc.
And you have no say in my opinion.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for sharing. I was expecting people to not want to share, so thank you for, making yourself vulnerable and sharing these. They really are. All right. So I am going to go back. Can you guys see the screen? I didn't know I was on camera this whole time. I was kind of shocked. Oh wait, there's one more. Was this one more? No. Okay. Is this a GIF? Oh. Okay. So so guys, we're almost done. So yeah, so I would like you, if this helped you in any way, if you enjoyed it, do it again later. Just take your time, paint a picture with words. You can free write if you're not trying to rhyme or make it rhythmical. And if you want to make it into an actual poem that you want to share, edit and improve it. I do believe anybody can be a poet. So if you guys are here, considering how tired everybody is and how, it's been a long day, I suspect you might be into it. But again, if you're not, if this doesn't resonate with you, give it a try. If it's not for you, then just take whatever does help you from any of, what I said today. I think, it's something that I went through personally. I was doing pretty bad, and I started trying, in my own ways to confront those emotions, and the load has gotten lighter and I'm able to function better. So if anyone in this audience is feeling heavy, poetry can be a conduit for releasing some of that, some of those repressed emotions. So final thoughts. Okay, what I just said, take what you need, adjust whatever I said to whatever serves you. Feelings need to be confronted or tamed, or else they become monsters. So don't neglect that. Don't neglect your mental health. Poetic language can help give us a comprehensible shape to the shadows. So we don't have to figure it all out. But if we're able to mirror pain, trauma with images that maybe shed some light on what's going on with you, we are more empowered. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, for sharing, for participating. Thank you, Jeanette and Johansson, for inviting me. I'm always honored. Do you have any questions or comments for me? Please evaluate this session. All right, so we're all going to go
give feedback. Yeah, so I think that this was a great end to the day because we've been talking all day about, how to write, when to write, what to write about. And I feel like this was a really good presentation because it's about turning, instead of seeing something literally, seeing it lyrically.
Yeah.
To make it more digestible. And so I think that's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we're all tired. So I will see you tomorrow. So we start at 9 a.m. tomorrow in Energy, where we're going to serve breakfast, and we're going to have an interdisciplinary teaching panel headed by Q, Quijano, who's in the chat. And then also after that, we'll have the two faculty editors of our creative writing magazine talk about the successes and challenges of doing that. And then we'll wrap it up in the afternoon with more breakouts like these that you can always access via our website.